for small and medium-sized businesses and industries, they really are in terrible shape. Can, for example, the Small Industry Development Bank of India, SIDBI, help them in any way now at this time? I mean, it was set up for crises as well. Or can the government or the RBI step in to take some of the losses in at least the incremental bank loans which are needed to get a small industry just back on track?
Well, so one way emerging markets differ from developed countries is we've got a much larger small and medium enterprise sector, much of it informal. And as you know, this sector has been hit multiple times over the last few years. And as a result, is in a very weak state. Now, that also creates a problem because some of these entities are, probably unviable. Given what has happened over the last few years. Also, some of them have huge debts, and giving them a little bit is not going to help, especially if it goes out of the door to pay the previous creditors. It just helps the creditors as opposed to help the firm. So one has to be a little careful because you can't remedy the sins of the past through a budgetary allocation now. You're not going to make the unhealthy amongst these healthy. What you can do is keep the healthy from turning unhealthy so that the entities that have the capacity to maintain their workers, that have the capacity to produce once again, once the restart happens, those entities should get adequate funding. And of course, if the banks are scared of lending at this point, we have to find innovative ways of doing it. Probably more guarantees from entities like the Small Industry Bank of India, SIDBI, but also potentially direct guarantees from the government for first losses. I proposed this in an article I wrote recently for those firms that are that paid taxes last year, in whom effectively the government has some equity, because it may get further taxes down the line if it keeps them alive. So lending to those may make sense. But I think you have to do it in as careful but clever a way as possible so as to reach people money when they need it. You can't be bureaucratic about this process. But you also have to be a little careful about how you do it, because the potential for fraud and malfeasance is also significant. So, for example, some people suggest the RBI should lend directly to small and medium enterprises. The RBI has no capacity to lend. Its officers don't know how to make commercial loans because that's not been their job. They know how to see whether a commercial loan has gone bad or not. But asking them to lend directly is really asking for a lot of trouble. So I would say work through the banking sector, work through the NBFCs, the viable, strong ones, work through the insurance companies, try and infuse, and work through large corporations. Large corporations, including public sector corporations,